So I kind of want to flip the script, Nathan. So you have helped so many companies source and get started and things like that. I'm sold Majuri is a great business. We should get into jewelry. If we were to start this, how would we do it? Where would you start?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one, I love their development process of creating CADs and 3D printing because I think what you see on screen versus what you get is always so different. And so the ability to do that with jewelry is so present that that's a no brainer. So, number one, I'd probably just go on Upwork, hire a CAD designer for a few $100 and start making iterations of jewelry designs that I like. Then I would go to like a local 3D printing shop, or I know there's like 3D printing shops online that you could just like send your designs to and they'll print it and ship it to you. I would start that way. Like, do I actually like the feel of this jewelry in person? At Sourcefy, we've helped a ton of jewelry brands optimize their supply chain and cut unit costs. I mean, I know one brand in particular we've saved like over 30% for, which was pretty awesome for them. But at the end of the day, jewelry is a high margin category. I mean, if you're selling $100 ring, you're probably not spending more than like, you know, 10% of that to produce it, if that. I mean, most jewelry margins are like 90+% gross, which is awesome. Sometimes even higher, which is amazing. So I think there's a lot of margin there. I think for the most part, most jewelry brands are spending a lot on marketing and to scale their brand and build that community. But from a supply chain perspective, I think jewelry is great because number one, you can test and actually like test the physical product before you even find a supplier. Number two, it's pretty easy to find suppliers in jewelry. Sourcefy has a huge network, which is awesome. But number three, they're pretty quick and fast to sample once you find a supplier. And number four, production timelines aren't too long. Number five, in general, the items are very small, so they're easy to ship. Though, I guess they could be a little bit heavier, but not that heavy. I mean, overall, jewelry for e-commerce is an amazing category because it's high margin, lightweight, and pretty agile to manufacture.
No, that's super helpful. Yeah, as you're going through those lists of things, I'm like, yep, lightweight, tick. Yep, high value, tick. Like, it's just it's amazing that there's e-commerce businesses that aren't jewelry, right? Like, there's just so much good stuff there.
The only thing that I think is missing for jewelry as a category that's probably really hard to do with jewelry is repeat purchase rate, right? There's no like subscription. Like, I don't know how you would put someone on like a jewelry subscription. Maybe you could do like a surprise box or something like that. But like, I mean, if jewelry for some reason, like if you create a jewelry brand that could have subscription, it'd be like home run. I mean, you'd have to do this. But I mean, nowadays with e-commerce, I think subscription is such a key, especially to manage cash flow, that I think that's the only thing this category is missing.
Yeah, I definitely, you know, we talk with a lot of influencers and people that have ideas for business they want to start. How often do you see influencers come and say, "Hey, let's do a jewelry brand"? Is this one of the categories that
Uh,
they
I,
pick up and say, "This is what I want to do"?
yeah, I would say pretty often in general because it's low cost to get started and it's pretty easy to ship and they can really effectively bring their designs to life. So I would say pretty often. I mean, there's so many simple ways to go about jewelry, whether it be just engraving something instead of doing like custom designs. There's so many different ways to go about it. And there's like standard ring sizes too. You don't have to go out and reinvent the wheel with jewelry, which is pretty awesome.
That's cool. Can you talk a little bit about like what the jewelry manufacturing ecosystem looks like? Is it something where there's lots of little players, a few big ones that clustered in certain geographies? What's that look like?
Yeah, I mean, most of the jewelry manufacturers that I know are in China. I know there are some other ones that are more unique, like in India or Vietnam, but I think most, scale jewelry production is done in China. It's a similar dynamic, I think, with most categories where, you might have a manager that was at a huge factory, want to go start their own factory. And so they start, and typically they start smaller. And that's how you have, these manufacturing bases that grow around one city. And it's such a interesting and phenomenal aspect, I think, of manufacturing, where for whatever reason, a lot of factories that produce the same type of product are in the same city. And that's typically because, those managers went out and started their own facility, but also from the raw material standpoint of, hey, this is where the raw materials are. This is where we're going to produce these products. And so I think that's, a really unique perspective when it comes to jewelry. But raw material jewelry could come from all over the place. I mean, it's not like a very rare material that they're using in most jewelry, but I think people would underestimate like the capabilities of factories to undercut their quality. And so quality control, I think, is super important in jewelry because, when you get a piece of a necklace or a ring or whatever it may be, when you get a new piece of jewelry, like just by touching it and seeing it, oftentimes you won't know, like, okay, is this 100%, you know,
Mm.
gold, or is it coated gold, or is it like, sterling silver? Like, what material is it? And a lot of times you might have factories like kind of uh, mismatch or miscategorize the material that they're using to save on cost. I mean, at Source 5, we've caught past factories that our clients were using where, they said, hey, this is 100%, stainless steel or whatever it may be. When you actually do a lab test on it, it's not, right? And so I think it is really important to check your quality when it comes to jewelry, because there's a lot of shortcuts that factories could take with raw materials that would be overlooked just by your feel and by your eyes. But if you actually do a lab test on that piece, you're going to be like, wow, this is 60% nickel and the 40% what it was supposed to be. So you have to watch out.
Yeah, it's like the top of a milk jug, the little circle part dipped in metal, and say, "Here's your ring."
Hmm.
That's what I'm imagining. I, in my research, I came across this difference between like costume jewelry and fine jewelry. Are you aware of like what's the difference between those two?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, like fine jewelry is a certain category that's very high end, like very refined manufacturing process. Price points are higher. That's from my understanding. I think as these e-commerce brands have grown, some of the differences have become a bit blurred. But like fine jewelry, you're typically talking about like wedding rings or diamonds or stuff of that nature. And refined could be like a refined type of material that is not a straight mineral or diamond that is from the ground.
That's helpful.
I think the hardest part is marketing. To be honest, I think if you come to Sourcify and say, "Hey, I want to start a jewelry brand, and I have 5 million Instagram followers," I'd say, "Hey, this can be easily a multi-million-dollar brand. Let's start and let's get the ball rolling." Or if you're a jewelry brand right now and you've had supply chain issues, like Sourcify has such a strong jewelry base that we know this category inside and out. We probably already know the factories that you're working with or thinking about working with, that I know we can have a lot of success with the brands that we work with in this category, because we've worked with some of the biggest brands in the jewelry category. So yeah, I don't wear too much jewelry, but I do admire the category and know a lot about it.